Next, debate from the floor of the Israeli Knesset. On January 19th, members of the Knesset convened to debate an amendment to the 7-year law banning Israeli contact with the Palestine Liberation Organization. But first, Oded Shor of the Israeli daily newspaper Ma'ariv talks about the functioning of the Knesset, as well as Israeli relations with the PLO.
Oded Shor, Washington bureau chief for Ma'ariv, a daily newspaper in Israel. On Tuesday, January 19th, the Israeli Knesset voted to lift the 7-year ban on contact with the Palestinian Liberation Organization. What does that mean?
In terms of Israel, it's a small revolution, political revolution, rather than anything else. 7 years ago, the party that was in power then, the Likud party, which is a rightist-based party, has decided to ban any meetings with PLO officials, using the argument that this is an terrorist organization. They send people to kill Israeli citizens. Therefore, we are not going to talk with them as long as they keep this idea of throwing the government in Israel and occupying Israel and throw all the Israelis to the Mediterranean Sea. That was the basic rationale for that.
What was the penalty for meeting with the PLO?
Few people who tried that went to jail for 6 to a year or something like that. Some of them, they were commuted by the president. But that was the basic. I mean, it was the moment you enact a law, if you go over that, you're punished. Then it doesn't really matter if it's a good law or a bad law.
What's changed that this ban can now be lifted?
Politics. For the last 12 years, we had a rightist government headed by Begin, the late Menachem Begin, and later Yitzhak Shamir. And they were very strict on this issue of the PLO, not talking to them. If you remember, Begin called them four-legged humans, and which is, so the political culture was that it was against any overt relations with the PLO as a terrorist organization. So at the moment the new government went into power this summer, headed by Yitzhak Rabin, it had on its platform the idea that it's going to abolish any law that will forbid any connections with the PLO. That was on the platform. The moment they got into the government, they enacted that. I want to explain something about the political culture in Israel. We are a multi-party system, which means that if you want to win the elections, you need at least 51% of the seats in parliament. We have 120 seats in parliament. If you don't have that, you have to create a coalition. The moment you create your coalition, it doesn't really matter what you pay to the other parties. We have something like 12 to 15 parties in the political system in Israel. You gain the majority of the votes in the House. It's like the British system. Then when you have the majority, you can pass most of the laws that you want to. I mean, this is democracy, and you have the influence of the political, public opinion anyway. But a law like that was abolished by a small majority in the Israeli parliament because the government had the clout to convince most of the people who were in those parties that are in the coalition to vote for it. So they abolished the law.
You said it's a small majority. What is that going to mean? I mean, do most Israeli citizens support this?
It's difficult because the party that's in power, the Labour Party, has something like 40% of the seats in the parliament. In order to get a wide majority, something like between 50 and 60%, you need to get other people to co-opt other political parties into the system. Now, it's not a very well-defined coalition. You have the Labour Party, which is like the center party. You have some leftist parties in the government, which are more dovish and would probably pressure the government into abolishing this law. It's not a very stable one. He has to move between the religious parties and the leftist parties in various issues, which sometimes collide even, in order to keep it. I guess, would like, I mean, the Prime Minister would like a better and larger majority in the Parliament. Doesn't have it.
What plans does the Prime Minister have for now establishing or reestablishing contact with the PLO? What does he hope to do?
Officially, we don't talk with the PLO. To make it easier, they differentiate between what they called people of the PLO government, if you can call it, or the PLO organization, which lives in Tunis, what they call the PLO Tunis, which is Yasser Arafat and all these people, the people who are part of the PLO organization, and the people who seem to be followers of the PLO but are not officially members of the PLO. So basically, we talk with the PLO under the guise of those who are representatives of the people at the West Bank and Gaza, which are not officially part of the PLO. But it's basically the same, because the one that calls the shots is Yasser Arafat in Tunis. They always, when they had these talks, the peace talks in Washington, they used to call him every day and to ask for his guidance, I guess, and his advice, and in any time they had to make a decision. So it really doesn't matter whether we talk with him or not. Officially, we are not talking with the PLO, and this will be the continuing. This is the official policy of the government.
Do you think that this will help resume the Middle East peace talks?
Not really, because it was expected of the new government to abolish the law anyway. People were expecting to do it right away in August. And when it didn't come, they realized it takes time. The government had said that it's some sensitive issues to fight for first, and then this issue. So the Palestinians in the occupied areas and other places accepted it as something which will be inevitable. United States accepted this as something which they call is domestic policy, so I'm not really getting into it, and they even suggested it by last week, Warren Christopher's speech, when he said this is something that the Israelis have to worry, and we are not going to explain or to even try to express any view of this. It's nothing to do with the United States. PLO people said it will maybe create a better, more positive atmosphere, but it's not really a major step in the Israeli government policies.
What effect does Hamas, the growing radical fundamentalist group, have on Israelis' perceptions of the PLO?
A lot of people think that it was a mistake by the Israeli government to let the Hamas develop and gain force in Israel. They found out that if at the beginning they wanted to create a counterforce to the PLO, what basically they did was to grow a snake in your own backyard. And the PLO now is being viewed in a lot of circles in Israel as much more moderate than the Hamas. The PLO at least wants to talk with Israel. The Hamas says that the only way he's going to talk is with guns, nothing else. It was a lot of people. I know that during the peace talks here in Washington, the Jordanian delegation berated the Israelis a lot because they said that they are taking this with a stride rather than putting their foot down and dealing more strictly with the Hamas.
Just briefly, give us an update on what the Israeli Supreme Court decided with regard to Hamas and the deportees.
Basically, it upheld the decision by the Israeli government to deport these 400-odd people. And it says that under the current emergency rules that we have in Israel, it's legal in the narrower sense of the meaning of legal. And it basically said, this is a political question. The government has to decide whether it wants to get them back or not. Nothing to do with the courts.
Before we look at a portion of the debate from the Knesset, tell us a little bit about your newspaper.
We are a private-owned paper, middle of the road. We are an evening paper, if you can call it, in Israel, because the evening paper get out the street very early. It's not what you call evening paper when it gets out in the afternoon in the United States. We sell something between 250 to 300,000 a day. We used to be more serious, but we had to go down to tone and become more yellowish, if you can say, in order to keep our share of the market. It seems that people like more colorful papers with kind of a more down-to-earth, the lowest common denominator stories other than very serious writings. We are not the Washington Post, unfortunately.
What do you write about for the paper?
I cover from politics to social issues, from abortion to Supreme Court decision, anything that it's of interest to Israel in a broad sense.
Well, Oded Shorer, thank you for joining us. We now want to show you a portion of the debate that occurred on January 19th in the Knesset, where they lifted the ban on contact with the PLO.
We'll now move on to the law that's been read now for the third time, third reading. We've already begun the discussions on this law. We'll continue with that discussion with some of the reservations on that move to repeal the law. A request from the members of Knesset, Parliament. I know that this move has drawn a lot of storm, a lot of response, and I'd like to conduct this discussion in sort of a cool way. There are 11 reservations to this move. You'll have 55 minutes, and please adhere to that time frame. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Head of the committee, Knesset members. Tonight at 9 o'clock, millions of Israeli residents will watch the television news. There will be two news items that will lead. They will both be important news items to the residents of the state. The first one will surely be the issue of the fatal attack today in Beit Zachor. A taxi driver is now struggling for his life in a hospital. He's from the western part of the country. And a few minutes after we see the blood and the terror of the act and of what happens in the operating room, we'll also see what's happening in this Knesset with the government coalition members who are bringing us to one of the most terrible days in the history of Israeli legislation, to give legitimacy to those who today sent the killers to kill Jews, that the only blame of this victim is that he was born Jewish. This is the image that the government of Israel is bringing to our homes today. Even if this event had not taken place today, this attack, there shouldn't be any hesitation and the strong effort of this government to give some kind of prize to the killers, the people who kill Jews, men, women, elderly, kids, innocent of all crime, of even any kind of political stance. And here tonight, the majority from the left side of the political spectrum will want to crown Yasser Arafat, Ahmed Jibril, George Chabash, Abu Nidal, members of Islamic Jihad, Hamas, the killers, the struggle that's being conducted here, the law that's been in effect for 7 years has been the thing that's kept us from being in contact with these killers. People on the left side of the spectrum who say that this law has no value, no importance, don't attach any importance to it. So why has the Prime Minister not even appeared for the first reading of this amendment to repeal the law? Why hasn't he refuted the notices that this law has a negative meaning, that it will hurt the interests of Israel? And from the security point of view, it will cause many more problems compared to those that it will solve. This is what the Prime Minister, not of the Likud, has said, but this is what your Prime Minister has said. You are picking a president against him, against Rabin. Fine, it's your right to oppose him. These are issues important to the security of the state. If the Prime Minister had appointed Peres's people, Shimon Peres's people, this is something that interests us on even a higher level. There was the issue of Ezer Weitzman's appointment by the Labor to be the next president, as opposed to the issue raised through the Judicial Committee of the Knesset. This is what the coalition, the dovish coalition on the left side, plus the people in the Meretz party, the five great lovers of Israel, Zihad, Mahbid, Mohammed Arashi, they're not even here. They're just out in the corridor drinking coffee. They're gonna just depend on their supporters here and send a fax to Tunis saying that everything's been taken care of. The Arab parties on the left side of the spectrum supporting the PLO. We are just. Our work has been done by people like Teddy Stoker, Avram Borg, and also the hawks like Ranan Cohen, who will vote. You'll be voting today on behalf of this amendment to repeal. I'll tell you, Emmanuel, you've read the law. Ranan Cohen has definitely read this law. Please, if you're going to ask him questions, let him respond. Please, just let him respond. And so this is the attempt to change the law to allow for context with the PLO, with these fronts for the Palestinian movement. On their belt, there are tens and tens of marks on their belt of Jews that have given their lives, that have been killed, that have killed many Jews, been involved in many acts. The Democratic Front, under the leadership of Hawatmeh, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine of George Habash, Hamas, that you've created, that you've presented to the public, that it has a great big difference between the fundamentalist Iranians as opposed to the moderate PLO. Today you're going to vote to allow for contact, for negotiations with the Hezbollah, with the Islamic Jihad, with Hamas, with all this group. It seems to me that there's a consultation between Ronan Cohen, that we have no real possibility of overturning this repeal of the law. But let me see about what is the logic that underlies this move of yours. According to the hawks of the Labour Party, but to prevent contact with these despicable killers. So you want to have an opening to the PLO. I don't agree with it. Can such negotiation, can the Labour Party is giving its supporters in the Knesset the opening to negotiate with people like Khawatmeh. We're looking at one of the journalists covering this proceeding. There is no government like this government that's fighting against the PLO. Moshe Amirav of the Merkaz. Woe to such people and to such results. At this time, I repeat, one of the victims of terror is fighting for his life. His kids are hoping for his recovery. But you want to give recognition to the people that pulled the trigger. Did it ever occur to you that this is the message that the Knesset is presenting to the public today, that while someone is fighting for his life to survive, here the government of Israel, which is supposed to and usually does protect lives, is now sending a message to the killers, those that pull the trigger. Here, from now on, we recognize you. Let's talk with your messengers, with the people who sent you, people who sit in Tunisia. And yesterday, and all the people, the victims in the cemeteries know about this attempt to give recognition to these killers. We can debate this for hours and hours here on the political meaning of this law. I also have friends in the left part of the political spectrum who said that this law preventing contact with the PLO is really to prevent contact with people who are trying to prevent peace, the PLO. So let's get rid of this obstacle. So let's see what the logic is behind this claim. Please carry on these discussions later. When was the peace process quieted? I read in the papers that the peace process has been quieted because Labour Party, people on the left, has deported 400 people from Hamas. And so the thought is that if we prevent progress in the peace process, that means that there once was. More than this. Progress in the peace process happened because we've prevented contacts with the PLO. We haven't given PLO anything. And now here we hear all these tributes to Haidal Abdel Shafi, the head of the Palestinian delegation in the peace talks. The government of Israel, which went to the peace process in Madrid, dictated 3 terms that everyone accepted, even if not joyfully, even if not in surrender, but at least they accepted these terms because they recognized the reality. The Palestinians in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza accepted these conditions. First condition was that no one who lives or works in Jerusalem, in United Jerusalem, would participate in the talks. In contrast to all their previous positions on this, they agreed to that term. Knesset member Eli Dayan, please. Chaver Knesset, member of Knesset Ranan Cohen, please. Please stop. This is disturbing us. Please stop already. Look, before you're the head of a coalition, you're a citizen of Israel. Look on the television, you see what's going on with Hamas. Listen, believe me, we're being involved in important discussions over here. This law has no connection to the security of the state. This was the law that was passed by Shimon Peres, who was the head of the government at the time. This is just yellow journalism. It's got no connection to the security of the state. Be serious. We spoke about the political view of this law, political approach of this law. Please, let's just stop already. Knesset members, I request that you just stop. I return to the political issue, which is the central issue here. And I continue to prove that the peace process started, became real, especially at a time that not only was this law in effect, but at a time when a government and the police was able to guarantee the security of the country, and became, thanks to people like Abi Nathan and Reuven Kaminer, all these people, maybe they wanted good. I'm sure that they did. No, not one of them wanted to hurt the security of Israel. No one wanted to have these meetings that they had with the PLO to lead to any acts of terror. It's not that they passed on any information to these people that would have led to the deaths of Israelis. Yesterday, a few people gave their opinions on this amendment. The hall is not exactly full, but this is part of the proceeding. So let's continue listening. Let's continue listening to the arguments of Tzachi Hanegbi, a Knesset member, that we vote against this amendment to repeal the law. until Yitzhak Shamir sat here and said no to James Baker, that will pay the price. And it's been proved that you can't buy the government. Just a week. A week later, the Palestinian delegation appeared in Madrid to discuss peace without preconditions, without Palestinians from Jerusalem, without Palestinians engaged in terror. Please sit. When you say that there were no official representatives of terrorist organizations, you seem to mean that there can be contacts with those who are not officially members of terrorist organizations. Well, all these people are in connection with the PLO. They have contact with the PLO. Please. Enough already. This discussion, thank God, Knesset member Darashi, this discussion allows me to speak a long time. Just let me speak and I'll answer all your questions. There's a basic question here, and justified question. The question is that you, the government of Yitzhak Shamir, began this peace process. And we say, in response, there are three basic approaches to political negotiations. One of them was presented originally by Tchia, maybe Moledet and Somet now is the supporter of this view, that there's no one to speak to, there's nothing on which to speak, that Israel is the greater Israel with the territories, and we have a biblical claim to Israel. So there's nothing to discuss. Then there's the opposite approach, the leftist approach, that says, let's not even discuss the philosophical or the historical argument on any claim to biblical Israel. We're pragmatic. We're practical. We don't want to discuss any promises that God might have made to the patriarch Abraham. In this part of history, this time of history, we can only worry about Israel, about the part of Israel that we can have as our own. The majority of the government, not just the majority of the Labour Party, says that compromise is relevant, it's important, and that we must establish a PLO state in the territories, in Judea and Samaria. I think it's something that threatens our existence, but it's a legitimate position. Then there's the third position, which is actually the most thought-through position, and that's the Likud position. And that position says that we have to live here in the Middle East forever, such as that terminology is even relevant. But we do have to live with the Arab nation, and we have to choose between the options. And the only option that is viable is the one for coexistence with the Arab nations. We cannot, as the Likud says, we cannot now have any kind of legal annexation of Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. We're not in any way ready to give up our lines of defense, though, our border lines. Because in terms of security, our security needs prevent us from giving up our security lines. But the Likud line, Likud position, says that even though we must hold on to these borders, we must live with this other nation. And our approach is to grant autonomy. There is no possibility of giving autonomy to those who don't even live within those territories that we're speaking of, with Arafat, Chabash, Jibril. But we can have autonomy for those who actually live in the area and who are interested in their future and in their quality of life. That basically they want to live just like people. So they can't say that they cannot live like people. We said to them now in Madrid, look, let's look forward. We want to speak with you. We don't care who you align yourselves with. We are convinced that when we reach the time to sign a contract, a peace contract, you'll just throw Arafat outside and just throw Jibril to hell and Hamas to the end of the world, because you'll be signing peace contract with us, and you'll be able to live with us without terror. And that's the Likud position. Knesset member Darasha. This is not Darasha. You speak about coexistence. But how can you speak about coexistence when one of the nations is conquering the other one and denies it the possibility of living its life of legitimacy? But we're actually oppressing this other nation. Is that your approach? Knesset member Darasha, please. Look, if you were speaking to a group of kindergarten kids, fine. Then I understand that you're speaking with people who just don't know the issue, don't know what we're talking about. But you're talking about an oppressed nation. These people, are for 100 years killing people. Please, let him respond to you. You asked him a question, let him respond. Enough. The Arab nation has 20 countries, more than 20 countries. The Jews came to the small place that God granted them. Right after we buried 6 million Jews. We just want to live in peace and quiet. You caused disturbances, pogroms. Israel, after the partition plan of 47, you didn't even discuss this issue for 5 minutes, whether to accept the partition plan in 47. And now this is still a tiny little country, and you just want to throw it into the sea. And so who do you want to come to with demands? You should be thankful that you live in a country of Jews, not in Scandinavia or America, and there the Palestinian students really learn about democracy. Japanese, there were 150,000 Japanese who were in concentration camps in America, American citizens who didn't in any way endanger the American democracy. And here, you who sit in the Knesset, and this one just runs around as if it's its own home. And this one is just laughing at us. Because we took away for 3 months his ability to be free. He wants to kill the Jews, not just with rocks. You should be thankful to God that Allah brought you to a Jewish state. Every day, 5 times each day, you should pray to Allah, thanking Him for this. Mr. Hanagbi, you have 4 kids as far as I know. I have 4 kids. All Palestinian and Israeli parents want their kids to grow up in an atmosphere of peace, that the two nations live in peace. And you know from the Jewish history that the Jewish nation fought for its independence and sacrificed for its independence. And that's really what the Palestinian nation is struggling for now. So if we don't allow for the existence of both nations, for coexistence, for full lives, to put an end to all this bloodshed. So let's give both nations a chance to live without constant fighting. I see that Mr. Hamid, Knesset member Hamid, but I don't want to hear anything from you. You haven't expressed any apology for your terrible remarks. Mr. Darashi, Knesset member Darashi, I'll respond to. So what I want to say to Knesset member Darashi, he asked a question, let me respond. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear a word. Please don't allow Knesset member Hamid to have the floor. I want to respond to Knesset member Darashi. I don't want to give you even 10 words of speech. I don't want to hear you at all. So who are you allowing to speak? Enough. Listen, I have a lot of points to make here, and we must move on. I just have to move on here. Mr. Darashi, look, we can sit for another hour and a half later and discuss this. Any other questions? But I want to just say now, your kids, my kids, expect from us to work for peace. You have a different approach than me as far as reaching peace. I believe in reaching peace just through the greater Israel with the territories. That's my point. I'm convinced that we cannot guard the security borders in this country, because if we don't, there won't be any Knesset, there won't be any Jews. All the Jews will have to swim on to Cyprus. See, the event today proves it. What point was there to shoot a Jew? You have a leftist government. You have a government that took drastic measures to eliminate terror by deporting the Palestinian activists, the terrorist activists. Please, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hanegbi is sort of riling the Arab members of the Knesset. He has his own hour to speak, and he's doing it as he pleases, as the rules allow. There's a law, and this law we must deal with, which has political and security issues involved. Those from the Arab parties that the Israeli law is only supposed to serve their needs to establish a PLO state. That's what they think. We have expressed our objections, but we've allowed you to and even Knesset member Eli Goldschmidt and Knesset member Yael Dayan know that the security authorities know that you cannot prevent a situation without having some kind of mechanism. We've presented our opposition to this amendment that relates to some of the security concerns of the security people that touch on the basic issue. And it should never happen. But it shouldn't happen that this law is rescinded. But if it is, then it should be in the context of allowing for the security forces to operate with full support, with full forces, to sort of control those who are meeting with these people. So what's the opposition's request? What's our terrible response? That the security forces, which is charged with a very important function, should have the resources. Should have the resources to do what it's supposed to be doing. Supplies, the vehicles. With the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Prime Minister, the government, that this law passed the Knesset. Look, they can fly to us. Thousands of people, Jews, and these are brutal, dangerous people. So they tell me, why are you raising the issue of controlling terror? After all, there's a law that deals with that. So I say to you that if you, Mr. Minister, that if there's even a potential chance, so you should vote with us for an amendment attached to this that would provide the proper resources to the security forces. So you might say, well, can't the security forces come here and speak about these issues themselves? So have they been given the proper resources so that this law will not hurt the security of Israel? Now I want to speak to Knesset member Yael Dayan. Yesterday, Ms. Dayan was kind of angry with what I said. But still, it's good that such Knesset members express themselves as opposed to being apathetic in this hall. But she said, don't involve my father, Moshe Dayan, in the discussion. I won't speak about your mother, Gula Cohen. And now she's, of course, running away from the hall. She went to meet with Nabil Shath of the PLO and his people. And his people, at the same time that she was meeting with them, put my mother, Gula Cohen, on their list of people to be liquidated. And she meets with terrorists. And that's the difference. But Fatah put Gula Cohen on the list of people to be liquidated. And of course I related this to her father, but not as her father, rather as a leader, a matter of fact, a labor leader of Israel, like Yigal Allon, Golda Meir, Galili, and a great line of great leaders, of giants. That of course that they knew when to draw a distinction between readiness and readiness to negotiate, as opposed to readiness to meet with terrorists, deal with terrorists. We're against any territorial compromise. And what's happening in the Labour Party is that there's a new approach for a territorial compromise. And also they're sort of ingratiating themselves or kowtowing to the PLO. It's not that they're in favor of that, of humiliating themselves and kowtowing to the PLO. But for a number of years, as opposed to Knesset member Dayan, they made a mockery of the law of Israel. That's the image that they present to the Israeli youth, to the Israeli public, of really of anything that's totally lacking any kind of sense. Now they're getting legitimacy. Now everything's permissible. But what will be permissible today has been changed. And now I want to respond to the question that was just... I want to allow the question that he wanted to ask from Ron Nachman. Look, you don't exist as a person, as a personality. If you will apologize, then maybe. I don't have any interest in talking to you. Don't even talk to me. I want to ask a question. Is there any connection between the point that today the Labour Party is supporting the law not only for context with the PLO, and also that the fact that recently the Israel Prize was awarded to Professor Leibowitz, who said actually from the other point of view the same thing that was presented today. Do you see any connection, even a symbolic connection, between the awarding of a prize to Professor Leibowitz and this amendment to repeal the law against contacts with the PLO or terrorist organizations? I'm asking a question here. Do you see such a connection? This is the new set of priorities. Knesset member Nachman, I didn't know that you would present this question, but I'll give you a personal response. Yesterday I appeared on a TV program, and at that event, Professor Leibowitz appeared, the one who was just awarded the prize. Professor Leibowitz stood on the podium. They asked him, and the moderator presented a very sharp question. You called the Jewish state a Nazi state. Can you stand behind such a comment and receive such a prize, the Israel Prize, a prestigious prize from such a government that you say is a Nazi country, Nazi government? And so Professor Leibowitz said, in his usual very routine openness, turned towards the questioners and says to all the country, the public, that the Israeli state has concentration camps for Arabs. And so they asked him, don't you understand what you're saying? You're saying that there were thousands of Arabs in concentration camps here in Israel? I am requesting of you and all the Israeli ministers to tell this damn man, you are getting a prize, that this person deserves any kind of degree, any kind of award. Tomorrow it'll be on the headline of all the papers in the capitals of the world. If he was saying that he's a hater of Israel, you'd get all crazy and excited. But now that he said what he said, so what are you going to say about this? Look, first of all, the government does not award the Israel Prize. It's true that the Prime Minister sits on the committee that awards the prize. But there is a total distinction between this prize and any political connection. There is no political context to it. People in the government and the coalition are not involved in the awarding of this prize. Thank you. Please, Knesset members. Please. People, I request Please. No. I requested at the beginning that this session should be quiet, relaxed. Questions. But please, from now on, let's keep it controlled here. Mr. Minister, Mr. Rubinstein, I must say to you, I cannot believe it's now 6 o'clock in the Knesset Hall in Jerusalem. We're on Channel 2, live coverage. We're in the middle of the discussion on the amendment to repeal the law on contacts with the PLO. This is now Tzachi Hanegbi who's giving his approach, his opinion on this issue. Let's continue listening. I want to tell you that I understand how this law reaches the Knesset. This law was imposed on the Prime Minister. That this law determines fates. Well, the Prime Minister was dragged along against his will here. But what are we? We elected a puppet here? You know, during the campaign, Rabin said, you know, I'll lead, I'll determine what's going on here. But who's he leading? What's happening? Well, what it is that the left extreme is pulling him along with them. This is how the Prime Minister is appearing. Mr. Hanegbi, Mr. Knesset member Hanegbi, we must have an intellectual head about this. The Likud, under the Likud government, Mr. Galili got a prize, and there was no, Mr. Habibi, that is, received a prize, and there was no discussion about whether it was partisan or not. But look, that committee has nothing to do with the political situation. I want you to just deal with 2 words. Today I heard several times, you're speaking about your Prime Minister, my Prime Minister. Look, the Prime Minister of Israel is the Prime Minister of Israel. It doesn't matter from what party he is. And so let's just stop relating him to us or you. He's the Prime Minister of all of Israel.
You've been watching debate from the floor of the Israeli Knesset regarding the 7-year ban on contact with the PLO. For more information, write to the Israeli Embassy at 3514 International Drive, Northwest, in Washington, D.C. The zip code is 20008.